Hi everyone. So today I'm going to be talking about how you can create custom symbols in our Simple GIS Client version 13 product. And specifically I'll be talking about some of the new features available in version 13 of the Simple GIS Client that allows you to combine graphics such as SVG graphics or portable network graphics, PNG files, into your marker symbols. And so just as a review, really, there's four different symbol types in Simple GIS Client. You have marker symbols, which is used to symbolize point features. As you see these blue stars on my map here, those are marker symbols on this point shapefile layer. In addition, you have polygon symbols to symbolize line features such as contained in this particular shapefile layer here on my map. And then you also have polygon symbols, obviously to symbolize polygon features as shown in my particular shapefile layer here for the state boundaries. And then finally, the fourth symbol type you have is a text symbol, which is used for your labels, if you label features on your map, or just if you add graphic text to your map using one of the graphic text tools. So while we talk about these different symbol types, one thing to note is that you can actually have different types of records that is a combination of markers or pens or brushes to make up a single symbol. So for instance, a particular marker symbol, I could have a font that I'm using, a character that has a symbol associated with it, along with a brush for a background color, if I so choose. In addition to a graphic like an SVG graphic or a PNG graphic. And hopefully this will become a little clearer as we go through this tutorial here today. So let's start with a marker symbol first of all. So I'm going to go to my point feature and I'm just going to bring up its layer properties by double clicking on the layer in my table of contents. And then I'm going to go to my legend tab. And I see the legend that's assigned to this shapefile is just a simple legend, which means using the same symbol for all the features in the shapefile. And I want to change this symbol from a blue star. And so the way I would do that is simply double click on the symbol and it brings up a symbol palette. Now obviously I could pick any of these predefined symbols from this palette if I so choose to assign to this legend. But let's say I wanted to create my own custom symbol. Well, quite simply, the way I would do that is simply double click on a symbol, and I could double click on an existing symbol, which would give me a starting point. In other words, I could start with this symbol and then modify it. Or if I was to scroll down to an empty square, I could double click on an empty square just to start with basically a new blank symbol and start from scratch. But for today's demonstration, I'm just going to take this default blue star symbol and I'm going to modify it. So I can double click on it. So at this point in time, I come up with my Create New Symbol dialog box, and of course I see I have several tabs at the top. The first tab is the composite symbol, which this is what the finished symbol will look like. And as I mentioned, a symbol can be a combination of different markers or fonts or pens or brushes, and they all make up this composite symbol. But in this case, since it's a marker symbol, all of these things combine to make a symbol that can be used to symbolize point features. So to begin with, if I want to change the actual marker itself, I have this one tab called Marker and Text Settings, and this allows me to create a symbol by adding different records, what we call marker records. They can be based on a true type font or on a graphic. In this case, I see that I have one marker record, and it's based on a font. This is actually a true type font that is installed with Simple GIS Client. So this is the font name. Here is the actual ASCII character for the font for the symbol that I'm using that represents the blue star. This is the font size of the symbol, which obviously if I can increase this or decrease it. as well as the opacity of this particular marker. So if I wanted this to be semi-transparent, I could change the opacity from 100 to 50 to make it semi-transparent, and that only applies to this specific marker record. So I'm going to change this back to 100. In addition, I can add offsets to offset the symbol based upon a specific distance. So I can simply move this to change. And you see this crosshair represents the center of where our point feature would be. And so the offset would just move the symbol in relation to some offset defined in the X and Y direction. In addition, I could also rotate the symbol. So I could add a rotation to the symbol to actually rotate this particular marker record. And in addition, I can combine multiple marker records to make a more complex symbol. So for instance, if I wanted to, I could add a graphic to this particular symbol by clicking on this Add Graphic button. At this point in time, I could select an SVG file or a portable network graphic file. In this case, I have an SVG file already created. And the SVG files work great for your marker symbols because they are vector-based, which means they're highly scalable without any loss of fidelity. So they work well when you're printing maps to high resolution printers. Whereas if you're using a raster image like a PNG file for your symbol, it can become grainy or pixelated if you begin to print it to a high resolution printer, just because it doesn't scale as well as like a vector graphic will. So in this case, I have this SVG file. I can just double click on this file and I see that it added it now to my marker. Of course, I don't see my blue star because it actually renders the symbol starting with the first marker, renders it, and then it renders the next marker record on top. And so right now, this graphic that I loaded is covering the star symbol. Now, obviously, I don't have a font name associated with this because this is a graphic file, and neither do I have a font character. I see that my size goes to 100. In this case, for graphics, this represents the percent size relative to its original size. So at 100 means 100% of its original size. If I was to put this at 15, it means 15% of its original size, and I see that it scales that graphic down. In addition, I could change the opacity for the graphic. So if I was to change this, of course, now it becomes semi-transparent. And now I see that I have the blue star underneath is showing through since I made the graphic semi-transparent. In addition, I could add offsets or I could rotate this as well for this graphic. In addition, I have pen settings, but pens on marker symbols do not do anything. For text symbols, they will add a halo effect around your text, but for marker symbols, this does not come into effect. You can add a brush, and what this simply does is add a background color to your symbol. And so if my brush style right now is set to clear, so I don't have any kind of background color or brush assigned to the marker symbol. If this was set to solid, and I set the color to red, for instance, and now if I was to look at my composite symbol, and the brush only fills in the background of your font symbols, and so it does not for your graphics, any graphic records that you've added. So in this case, I see that I have my blue star on top of a red background now, since I had set the brush to solid and set its color to red. Again, if you don't want the brush, then just leave the brush style set to clear, and then this will remove the background from your symbol. Of course, I could save this symbol if I wanted to by simply clicking under the Composite Symbol tab, clicking Save Symbol, and I can save it to a special file called a symbol file, which has an SYM file extension. Or if I had previously saved a symbol file, I could load that symbol by clicking the Load Symbol button and then just selecting the symbol file and loading it into my dialog box here. Once I'm done with my symbol, I simply click Apply. It's asking me, do I wish to replace the existing symbol in the palette? Select yes to replace or no to add it to the end of the palette. Quite honestly, this doesn't make a lot of difference which option you select. I'll just say yes for now. And it's going to place it here in my palette. Now when I click OK with this selected, I see that it actually puts that symbol for my legend. And now if I was to click apply on my layer, I would see that all my point features are now labeled or symbolized with that new symbol. So that's the marker symbol. And so that's some of the new properties. The SVG support and the portable network graphics file, the PNG file support, are all new in version 13 of Simple GIS Client. Likewise, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here to one of these line features. So let me just pick one here. If you wanted to modify your line symbol, I could come and I can double click again on this layer. I'm going to come to my motorways shapefile layer. And now I'm going to go again to my legend tab, just like I did for my point feature. And again, I just have a very basic simple legend. And I'm going to double click on my line symbol to bring up the palette. And again, I can obviously choose one of the predefined symbols, or I can modify one of the existing symbols. And so here I am again in the Create New Symbol dialog box. I'm on the Composite Symbol tab. Now for a line symbol, just like on a marker symbol where you can have more than one marker record to make a more complex symbol pattern, you can also have more than one line record or pin record to make a complex line symbol. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come here to my pin settings tab. And if I look on this tab, I see that here is my pin records, which I only have a single record right now. I see that it's selected and the style is set to solid. This is its width at 1.5. It's 100% opaque. And then these are the end caps for the pins. And this really determines how separate line features are joined together. In addition, I can add a custom dash dot pattern, or I can also add markers along my line based upon whatever marker records I have set under the Marker and Text Settings tab. So let's start pretty basic. So with my current pin selected, I'm going to leave the pin style set to solid, and I can change the width, and I'll set it to something like 3, and I see I get a much thicker line now. And now if I wanted to, I can add an additional pin, and I can come here and now select this pin. And now I'm going to choose, I'm going to leave it set to solid. I'm going to put the pin width at 1.5, so half as thick. But I'm going to change the color, and I'll change it to something like this aqua blue. And I see now I get this nice pin pattern where I have like a dark outline with a light interior on the pin. And so I could certainly keep with that. Also notice with this pin selected, just like on the markers, it renders the symbols starting with the first pin record and then going to the next pin record. So the thick black line we initially placed is on bottom, and then it's rendering this thinner light blue line on top of that, which is creating this effect. I could also take this light blue line and change its pin style to something like dash. And now see I get a different effect where I have still my solid black line in the background, and then I've just overlaid this dashed light blue line on top of it. And so you can get different neat feature effects that way. You could also change the opacity of your individual pin records if you wanted to. So if I wanted the black line to be semi-transparent, I could do that. In addition, you could create your own custom stylus. So right now, if you recall for this light blue line, I set its pin style to dash. If I wanted my own custom pattern, I could set this back to solid. Actually, what I want to do is come here and select it to custom, which means I'm going to do a custom style, and then I'm going to add a spacings for the actual line and then the width of the space I want to add, and then the next width of the line. So for instance, if I was to come here and let's say I added a dash space of 5, and then I want to skip 10, I see now I get this much more spread out dash pattern. So my dash mark itself is only 5 in length, and then my spacing is 10 in length, so twice as wide. And so I can create my own custom pattern this way. Then if I wanted to come in here and I wanted to add another dash with just a length of 2, and then maybe another spacing with a length of 7, I can see that I can get an even more unique dash pattern. And so that's one way to create your own custom dash pattern. Now, as I said as well, I can add markers on top of this. And so if I was to come here to my marker and text settings tab, and let's see, I have a marker added that's a font, but it's just a regular font, and I see my font character is 0, so it's not rendering anything. So let's pick one of the fonts that comes installed with Simple GIS Client. So one of those is, let's say, Modern Pictograms, for instance. And now let's pick a character, and I'm just going to scroll through this. Most of your font characters normally start at like ASCII character 33 for the symbols. But let me blow this up a little bit so I can see what I'm adding. So I'll make this a little bit bigger. Let's keep going. Whoop, wrong way. And then I can just scroll through the symbols until I find one I like. Maybe that money bag might be a good one. And then I'm just going to increase the size a little bit more. And then I'm going to change the offset. And one thing I'm noticing as I'm doing this, if you can notice it on the video, our crosshairs is a little bit obscured at the top. It looks like it's whited out. And so what that's telling me is I have my brush set in the background, and it's probably set to white for the background color. And so therefore it's kind of hiding, this crosshair. So if I want to get rid of that brush, again, I'm going to go to my brush settings tab. And now for my brush style, again, it's set to solid. I'm going to change this to clear. And now if I come back to my marker, I see that I don't have that white hiding the crosshairs. So now I don't have any brush in the background. And so at this point, I have my marker established. If I look at my composite symbol, though, it's still just this pen with the light blue line laid on top with the custom dash pattern. But if I was to come back to my pen settings tab, and now if I was to add in a marker stylus, and let's say I want to set this to 10, and what I want to do is for this image locations checkbox, I can set this to a pattern, which means put that marker symbol every 10 spaces along the length of the line. And I can create a custom pattern just like I did for the dash pattern for the pen. If I didn't want a pattern, I could also just say place the marker at the midpoint of the line. Or I could put it at the start point. I could put it at the start point only, or I could put it at the start point and midpoint, or I could do start point, midpoint, end point, either way. Or again, I could just stick with a pattern. And so maybe I don't like that. Let me make it a little bit wider spacing. So I'll do it every 15. And now if I click apply, again, you're going to get this box saying whether you want to replace the existing symbol. You can either select yes or no. I'm going to select yes for now, and then click OK, and click apply. And now I see that it's rendered my line with those markers along the length of the line using my custom line pattern. Now I do want to show you one other thing, talking about symbolizing lines, and this is more to do with the legend. But let me come back to my layer properties by double clicking on the layer. I'm going to go to my legend, and I'm actually going to take off this marker symbol for now. So I'm going to double click on the symbol. I see that it's down here in the palette now, so I'm going to double click on it again. And now for my pen settings, I'm just going to take off the pattern. Actually, it was on this line here. That one point I should mention though, and I'm glad I did this. If you notice, this marker that you're setting on this marker stylus to is specific to the pen record you have selected. So if you was to click on pen record number 1, you see you have no marker stylus and it has no settings in terms of the image location. That's because I had set that on pen record number 1 here. And so here you see I have the marker stylus spacing, and then I have the image location set to pattern. So I'm going to uncheck that. I'll delete my marker stylus, and then I'll click apply and click OK and apply again. And so this is what I wanted to show you. If you'll notice on your lines, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer here just to make it obvious. Looks like I have two lines side by side, which I do in this case. One thing that you might run into is, especially if you have something like, actually let me change this to make it a little bit clearer of what I'm trying to illustrate here. So let me change the symbol. I'm going to choose one like this symbol here. I'm not going to bother modifying. I'll just select one of the predefined symbols and click apply. If you notice, as you get into some of these, you have these, you can tell where the lines join together. So there were separate lines here because you can see this little line here. It may be hard to see on the video. Let me blow this up again. Oh, didn't mean to do that. I'm going to take, let's make it a little bit darker. I want to make it thicker as well. So I'm going to come to my pens. I'm going to modify this. I'm going to make it really thick to really illustrate this point. So I'll do something like this. Apply, yes, okay, apply. And so now hopefully this is a little bit clearer, but you can kind of see these parts where these lines join. And if I use my identify feature or just use my select feature tool, and if I was to select this line, you can see this is a line that goes all the way back and it ends here, and then it starts a new line that goes here. And so what it does is where these lines join, you can see the end caps of those lines. If you don't want that, so a lot of times when you're symbolizing road features, you probably wouldn't want that. You'd want this to appear as one continuous line. You wouldn't want to see where these joins are or these end caps. The way you can control that is with your legend setting. So if you was to double click on this legend and go to this legend tab again, and at the very bottom down here you see this little checkbox right above the apply button that says use advanced rendering. And what that does is it changes how these features are rendered. So instead of rendering a feature at a time, it first renders all the features with the first pen record, and then it renders all the features with the second pen record. And what that has the effect of doing is making those joins disappear. And so now it looks like one nice continuous long line. So I just wanted to illustrate that real quick. It's really not dealing with customizing the symbol as much as just changing that setting on your legend. And then the other type of symbol, of course, is your polygon. So let me zoom back out here. I'm going to turn some of these off just so we can more clearly see the polygons. And so a polygon is made up of a pen, which defines the border or outline of the polygon, and a brush, which determines the fill inside of the polygon. And so we can see that if I double click on my state boundaries layer and go again to my legend tab, double click on its symbol in the legend to bring up the palette. Of course, here's all the predefined symbols we could select from. I'll go ahead and take the one that's already created for this and we'll start modifying it. So again, I'm back in the new symbol dialog box on the custom composite symbol. If I was to go to the brush settings, of course I can change the brush style to a hatch pattern if I so choose. I could also change the color of the brush I'm just picking a random color here. And then if I wanted to change the border or the outline of the polygon, I could do that under the pen settings. So I see now I have a single pen record. I could add additional pen records to make a more sophisticated compound pen if I wanted to for the border outline. I can change the width and the color of this pen, of any pen record I choose. I can make it dashed or solid. And as I do that, if I go to my composite symbol, I see that I'm indeed changing the outline of my polygon. So I've got this hatch pattern, which I chose under the brush, and now I've got this red dashed outline for the border. In addition, just like on the pen symbol, if I wanted to add a marker record and create a marker record based on a font or a graphic, and then if I wanted that marker to appear at certain points along this line, I could do that and have it appear on the polygon outline as well. And so now as I click apply, yes, and click OK, and apply again, I now see that it has changed my polygon symbols. And now the last symbol that we haven't discussed yet is the text symbol itself. So for that, I'm going to go up underneath my view property. Since we don't have layers, unless you have a graphic layer, you could do it with a graphic layer that you can create in simple GIS. But you can also just add basically map graphics to your map or labels as well. So what I'll actually do, I'll do it this way. Let's go to the state boundaries layer again. I'll double click it. And I'm going to come here now to my label definition tab, which this is what determines what gets labeled for this particular feature on your map. So if I was to come here, and these are the available fields in my state boundaries layer, and I have this name field. So let's say I want it to name the state name for each feature. So I'm going to select the name field. I'll click this button to move it here under my label definition. And I see that I have this font symbol, which is basically just your text symbol that it's going to use for your label. So I can change that again by double clicking on it. And it's going to bring up a palette similar to what we're used to seeing. And let's look at some of these symbols. And of course you can modify these or create your own. But we'll take this one here, second from the bottom. So I'll double click on it. And again, I'm back at the Create New Symbol dialog box, and I'm at the composite symbol, so you can see what the overall resulting symbol looks like. But let's see how this was created. So if I actually click on the Marker and Text Settings tab, what I'll see is I have a marker record here, and it's based on the Microsoft Sans Serif font. So for a text symbol, you don't have to worry about the font character because it's going to be whatever the text is. This is just the font it's going to use to render the text. Now you can change the size and you can change the opacity of the individual text. And of course, you could also do some things with the offset and rotation as well. But let's look at the font color on this. And so I see I have my opacity set to 85. So it's semi-transparent, but you see I have a couple of things going on here. I have this light, looks like interior of the text, and then I have this dark halo or outline around the text itself. And so if I look at this particular marker for my Microsoft Sans Serif font, if I click on this, I see that my font color is actually white. And so for this particular marker record, it is actually set in white and it's semi-transparent. And so that's what you're seeing as the light interior here. How it's getting the black outline or halo around this text is from the pen settings. So if I click on my pen settings tab, I see that I have a single pen record. It's solid and it's 2.25 in width. And of course, if I click on pen color, I can see that it is set to black. And it's also set to somewhat semi-transparent with an opacity of 75% rather. And so that is what is creating this dark outline or border around my text. So your pins can be used to create halo around your text symbols. In addition, if I did want to add a background color, I could come to my brush settings and I could change my brush style, again to solid. And if I was to change my brush color, I'll just pick something that'll stand out, red. And now if I looked at my composite symbol, I see that I have this red background over my text. I'm not saying that you want to use it, but again, it's a possibility. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to turn this back off, go to my brush settings, set my brush back to clear. And now I'm going to accept this as the symbol and click OK. And now when I click I need to also make sure this box is checked at the bottom for these labels to appear. I need to make sure the auto label checkbox is checked. So I'll click apply. And let's see what happened. It didn't label because I don't have something set correctly. Let me try that again. Apply. There it goes. It took it that time. So yeah, you have to make sure that auto label checkbox is checked for it to label properly. And so now I see that these symbols appear, and they're using that, these labels appear rather, and they're using the symbol that we had selected for that font for the label itself. So that kind of covers all the different symbol types and how you can create your own custom symbols. And of course, there's practically endless combinations you can come up with in dealing with all of those different features in your custom symbol dialog box. Again, the support for the SVG graphics and the PNG graphic is brand new to version 13 of the product, and hopefully that just extends even more possibilities for users to be able to create their own custom symbols. As always though, please visit the website if you have any questions. You can reach us through our Contact Us link in the website. And again, that website is simplegissoftware.com. Thank you. Have a good day.